Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Not Quite the Witching Hour. I have a guest tonight, my longtime and dear friend Maria Wheatley, who, if you know anything about megaliths in this part of the world, you know Maria's work. She's written numerous books. She's all over the place on TV. She's on shows like Ancient Aliens. She's on everything. She's everywhere. And she's very active in this world of the megaliths. Now, this is kind of like was Maria's idea but it was something that's been on my mind for a while as well. And it's like this is almost like an emergency meeting we're having here to share with everybody on my channel and anywhere else this is played. Something is happening. There is something akin to a great reset happening with ancient sites, not just in terms of access and ownership, which is a huge problem, but everything from information lockdown, who's allowed to be the talker about it, the discusser of it, who's allowed to present ideas and theories about it. And it plays into a very sinister thing, I feel, because it's not just only our ancient Neolithic and Bronze Age history, but it's popping up in things like the Middle Ages as well. There seems to be an AI kind of official rewrite or lockdown on the information regarding it. And so, Maria, tell people what's going on. It's incredibly frustrating.
It is incredibly frustrating. That's right, Thomas. And what's going on is been subtly going on in the background for quite some time now. For example, if we look to sites like Avebury Henge, it's the world's largest stone circle in Wiltshire. It's a wonderful site. It used to be free all year round. You could go there by day or by night. But recently you've got English heritage staff wandering around looking at people and to find out if you're meditating or if you're in a group or if you're a group leader. They have a question, they have a wear a t-shirt saying ask me a question. That's what they go around in, but they're looking to what people are doing there. I was doing some filming with a colleague of ours, Thomas, and they came over and literally started shouting at him for filming me for a few moments. They want us to apply for permits to take people around ancient sites. That's the first step. The second step is everybody's going to be paying. And do you think they would give the alternative voice a permit?
No, no, I had no
No.
idea that was going on in Avebury. Avebury is in a village. It's almost like a town park. This is this is frightening to me, actually. Uh, and even if you go there late at night, there's these these security guards.
They're English heritage staff. I don't think they're there at night, thank goodness, yet. But this is the first step towards monetizing a free site. And they've stopped all car parking by the end of the avenue. They have stopped you going into any other car park or parking anywhere near the site unless you use their car park. That's never before been done.
Now, is that the car park behind the bookshop that used to be quite close to the circle that had that little path along it? Is that one?
Yes, that one's closed now to you have to have a permit to park in there.
So where do people who don't have the permit park now?
They have to pay the £8.50 fee and park in the English Heritage National Trust car park, which is on the other side of the monument. It's really about seeing who's coming into the site and what they're doing. That's the plan. That's what they're trying to do. And even that's Avebury, and that's my town near enough, as you know, Thomas. Now, if we go to somewhere like Glastonbury, Abbey. I have been interacting with Glastonbury Abbey for ever since the 80s with my late father and with myself and with many other colleagues from around the world. I have one of their leaflets in front of me. Enjoy your visit. I'm going to open up that leaflet and tell you what it says. Take care while exploring. Supervise children at all times. This is a scheduled monument. It is a criminal offence to change or remove property. Do not climb on the ruins or trees. Unauthorized, and any ceremonies are not permitted. So if you wanted to do a private ceremony, like many of my clients do, they're impromptu. And sometimes they feel that they want to, do a ceremony that's now prohibited unless you get formal permission. Now, on their website, put my glasses on one moment, Thomas. On their website, going further, it says Glastonbury Abbey does not allow unauthorized ceremonies, especially those that might disrupt other visitors. Fair enough. Or clash with the site's Christian heritage.
Se- Glastonbury, okay, we know it has a Christian heritage, but in terms of like we know the Abbey and all St. Patrick and all that stuff, but that's predated by the Arthurian thing, which is we don't know what that is, how old that goes back, and where it comes from. Also, that's astounding because now is that the Abbey or is that the Tor or just the general area?
That's the Abbey rules, where you have to have permission to do any type of simple ceremony. Preceding that new visitor centre at Glastonbury Abbey, you could have always done a simple ceremony there. And if we look to its history with the first wattle church of Christendom, created by Joseph of Arimathea, then that was a circular church with a diameter of 79 feet 20 inches, based on the bluestone circle at Stonehenge of the exact same dimension, which is the diameter of the earth if you change inches to miles and change it to the distance of the diameter of the planet. So that 79.2 is encoding in both of those constructs the diameter of the earth by changing the feet to miles. And so I think it was based on Stonehenge's pagan monument of its bluestone circle. It copied the exact sacred geometry, as John Michel points out.
Well, of course it does, because that's shown all over the place. And we know for a fact, and it's not, and especially in England, it's so obvious that the oldest Christian sites are pagan sites. The same in Ireland. Whenever there's a
Exactly.
round tower, that was a pagan site. Clonmacnoise, you name it. Now, or even like the Celtic High Cross, what they call the Celtic Cross. That's the floor plan of Cairn L in Lough Crew, just lifted up vertically like that. This is my late friend Jack Roberts discovered that years ago. This is astonishing stuff and very disturbing and very worrying. Now, the last time we were working together in Glastonbury. We did a conference together and at AV, which was a great day out for both of us. You told me something before that, and then I don't know if you want to talk about it on camera, but you were basically blacklisted by Stonehenge. Uh, are you okay talking about that?
Absolutely, Thomas, because as I may have mentioned, that I have been writing for Stonehenge English Heritage Visitor Centre shop for 10 years. I've kept all the invoices. I had books out, they were selling very well, they were earning money, I was earning money, it was really good. And then suddenly with my latest book talking about the long-skulled people and political side of Stonehenge, all of my books got instantly banned. Now that's changed since as well, because I've always done filming at Stonehenge, as you have, Thomas. We have been filmed worldwide, so to speak, and I've always been able to do what I want. Well, I was copied in. I'm doing a part of a film it's coming out on Amazon called Code 12, the sequel, and I was copied in on the email listings, and suddenly it said, "Is she," not addressed me by my name, "is she going to be doing dowsing? Because if she is going to do dowsing, she will not be able to be permitted to be filmed." So even when we were paying thousands of pounds, well, the production team were paying thousands of pounds, they are restricting the narrative of what you can say. I had to give an itinerary of what I was going to speak about on camera at Stonehenge, even though it was for an independent film company. They want to control the narrative.
And that's what really worries me the most. That because, and this is really why it's so important for everybody around the world to hear this. I know that's England, Maria has her story. I have my stories here in Ireland. We both have our own stories around the world. This notion that there's an official story is extremely sinister. Even the Puritan Christians didn't even do this. The notion that, no archaeologist can tell you for certain what any of this stuff is. All they know is that they pull stuff out of the ground and that's it, from the site, from the dig, and they have their own theories. Now, Maria's theory regarding Stonehenge is no less valid than, the English heritage scientists and archaeologists' theory of it, because they're both based on the same kind of deductive exploration, but there's no absolute hard proof. It's a lot like an art, really, isn't it? In the same way that my theories regarding the stuff here is no different than the Royal Irish Academy, but the Royal Irish Academy are incredible gatekeepers here of antiquities in Ireland for lots of reasons that are also just equally as sinister as English heritage. And this is what really upsets me, is that, like, what will happen? Essentially, you were banned. You were book banned. You got an Orwellian treatment in the Stonehenge. And if you go into the Stonehenge bookshop, it's full of a lot of stuff that's, I would call out there too. Even their stuff on things like druids are often wildly speculative, but there seems to be an in crowd and an out crowd, and you were made the out crowd. Do you remember about 10 years ago? I'm not going to name the site because I have two friends who are young archaeologists there here in Sligo. We were making a film, and I nearly got into a fight with the guy there who told us to get out. Remember that? And I
Yeah.
told him to F off back to the gift shop. Now, they're still holding that to me to this day. 10 years
No.
they're still now. I don't get banned like you do. It hasn't been that, but it will, because they've applied for UNESCO heritage site. So what does
Ah.
that mean? When you get a UNESCO heritage, you put a fence up around it and you build a car park and you have an admission price. That's what UNESCO heritage means. And I don't even go there anymore. I took someone there about 2 years ago, and I was made feel very uncomfortable. And what can you do? What can you do? And again, my theories, what makes me annoyed is that the officialdom never really had an interest in these places. Well, fellas and girls, call me girls, I mean, with people like you and me, I don't mean to be sexist, but people like you and me put our hearts, souls, and life into these ancient sites, right? And then suddenly we're told you're persona non grata and you don't matter anymore. When the popularity of these sites is more down to people like you and I, and to a larger degree, Graham Hancock, who's on Joe Rogan, than it is to any cold hearted academic.
Yes, and I think as well, the spiritual side calls to people as well. You can have an academic side, you can have an alternative historian side, and you can have the spiritual side as well. And a lot of people visit ancient sites for that reason. And you're right, the evidence that I present and other alternative voices present as well is based in fact. I mean, when I photograph those elongated skulls, they're photographs that have the proof there and then. It's almost like the authorities, the they out there, so to speak, do not want the truth of our whole heritage of the ancient sites, of who built them and why they were built. That's what the big foot is coming down on. And if you have a voice of that, and you're not Graham Hancock with a very large following and you've got a lot of money behind you, if you're trying to put out that voice, it's very difficult.
That's because it's become hugely popular. That's because it's captured. You have like people like Joe Rogan, the biggest podcast in the world. He constantly
Mm.
features things about ancient mysteries. And the average person who listened to his show would have never known anything about this stuff, are suddenly going, gosh, maybe Atlantis is real. Maybe we're not being told the truth about Egypt, blah, and this kind of thing. And then, you have like archaeologists like Flint Dibble coming on and saying anyone with a different opinion to us is a racist or a white nationalist. This kind of absolute stupidity and nonsense, desperation, I would call it. I think these people, these gatekeepers, are absolutely terrified they're losing control of the thing. And the whole thing is that, like when they say, at least like a spiritual thing, our ancestors built them as spiritual sites. To deny that to us is the same thing as a Catholic being told they can't go into Notre Dame, or any other religion being told they can't go into their temple or church or whatever. This is it's almost like as our world is starting to grow, it's back to the witch hunt times again under King James and the Puritans again. It's almost like the state has said, in the past, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, thou shalt not suffer an alternative researcher to discuss.
Yes, I mean that is the case. I have found in America though, when I've gone to some of the American ancient sites, like led a tour there to Chaco Canyon and Aztec ruins, they embrace the alternative. They're really interested in the idea of lays or ley lines and earth currents and earth energies. And the archaeologists there actually listened to me and were in part in agreement. They call it a meridian line, linking certain sites going down from Charco Canyon, whereas I myself would call it a lay. So I think I've got support in the United States to some regard, the people that I have met there, but I find them more open-minded. I think as well with the spiritual side, when spiritual people come together at ancient sites, they talk, they discuss, they share their ideas, they share what they want the future of the planet to be sometimes. And so it's more also behind that, I think it's like a little mini movement. And I think with, people like Joe Logan and the others, they do attract a lot of intelligent thinking people that are questioning the historical dates. I mean, if we look at a historical date, 2500 BC rings around the world, no matter where you are. That's when the pyramids were built. That's when Stonehenge Phase 2 was built. You don't need any other date than 2500 BC. And it's been shown that there's water erosion on the Sphinx, and the SARS project recently is suggesting that there's structures beneath the pyramids. So this date, even alone, that the historian books tell us, is completely incorrect.
That 2500, we've spoken about that many times over the year. It's almost like a brainwashing programming thing. Everything is 2500 BC. It's like a handy number. Another thing that I think is very important in this age, especially, is that, and you and I have both experienced this with people, you may bring someone who doesn't know a lot about megaliths into, say, anywhere, any megalithic site, right? And you can suddenly see them going quiet. They may just have been interested from a kind of his history or a nerdy kind of way, but you could see them going quiet. I saw that not too long ago at Longmeg and our daughters up there in Cumbria. And I watched this man, and he was like an elderly Canadian man, and he started touching Longmeg, the stone, and you could see the ancestral codes unlocking. That's the way I would put it. He was like, this is not just a stone with an interesting spiral on it, surrounded by stone circles. This is not only means something in the greater scheme of things, but it means something to me too, personally. And
Mm.
there's a tremendous sense of communion for a lot of people, and it's it's an epiphany for them, to use a Christian term, that they have. And once that happens to them, they're never the same person ever again.
No, and I often think, especially when you go into powerful places, as indeed Longmeg and her daughters are, that you're in an altered state of consciousness.
Yeah.
There is, in those sites, you do change and have an altered state of consciousness. And people have, experienced this and felt it. And for some, it can be completely life changing. Last year, I was at Avebury Henge and we were using what's called the mind mirror. That's you get your areas of your scalp are being monitored for your brain waves, and you can see it on a console. And it was analyzed by the Monroe Institute to see how my brain was changing around the megaliths. And as I walked towards or away from the megalith in its energy field, for a better want of a better term rather, it was causing peaks in my brain of delta, which is when you're really, really thoroughly relaxed. So we know through analyzing brain waves at places like the pyramids, at places that contain stone circles, that my brain is changing when I'm around the energies of the stones. And also in a latest experiment, what I did is we put some copper probes into the ground on particular megalithic energy patterns. If you imagine megaliths, they release particular energy patterns according to my world of dowsing. Well, we looked at those energy patterns and recorded it, and they have a Hertzian frequency that equates to a healing frequency, like 133 hertz, for example, puts you in a meditative state of mind. And that changes us. And I think that's part of the repressed way that English heritage and other places want to stop us interacting and our brains expanding, and we feel differently, and then we'll start acting differently. That's how megaliths can change our lives.
I fall a lot at sites. I lose my balance and slip. It's happened at Dromore, it's happened in Orkney, it's happened in Norway, at Sola, at the Stone Circle there. And it used to bother me. And then I know a lot of people seem to fall and slip at Stone Circle sites. And I think it's because you go into this, you sort of lose your sense of your body and you start feeling like a kid or something, or a child. And the next thing you know, you're not watching your footing and you slip on some slippy grass or something. And but that's something that, and then it's almost like I'm in a dream state. And the next thing I know, I'm halfway on the ground or on the ground, and I wake up, and that shows you that this thing is affecting your head in some way. And I've had bad experiences at some sites as well. Not always good. So, I remember when we were in Sardinia, I had a terrible experience at one megalith up in the mountains there. Remember when I pushed down
Mm.
the wall to escape and that thing into the farm? But it was like I've had bad. That was the only really bad one, I have to say. I've had uneasy feelings, but that was the only bad one. It's but those experiences, all of them are relative. They're all important. They're all important to have. And by restricting access, like what you said about what's going on, the nonsense that's going on at Avebury now, it's like walking up to someone in church who's praying or meditating or, I don't know, meditating on the mysteries of the Gospels or something, and then coming up and saying, "What are you doing here?" It instantly
Mm.
interrupts the connection. It's like it's almost like when it's almost like you're having a nice sleep or a dream, and someone wakes you up, and it seems so sinister to me what they're doing there now, because when you go to Avebury, you see lots of people meditating or doing things on alone or with their friends or in a group. That seems to be a deliberately disruptive thing to destroy a spiritual experience. Am I right? Or am I?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And that's where we must remind ourselves as well that, these sites were given to the people of this land to enjoy and to interact with. So that's our first right. These are ours to interact with. And I think if we keep up, what we should be doing there by ourselves, independently, not part of the English Heritage Permit crew, so to speak, then I think we can keep them alive for our children and our children's children, so that they can enjoy them. And that's why, if it goes any further, I think there will be some protests at places like Avebury. And just recently, I did a lovely tour of some recumbent churches. Uh, in West Berkshire, and I put out on Facebook that I would be meeting people at Avebury. I was using the car park there, and the Avebury vicar popped up on my Facebook profile with a message in capital letters, like shouting at me. You have not been granted permission to go to any of the Avebury churches, Maria Wheatley. Refund everybody immediately. This event is cancelled. So I kindly put at the bottom, if you'd asked me where I was going, I'm not going to anywhere at Avebury. And I deleted his post because people were starting to say, "Who do you think you are?" And I didn't want, it to be negative. But then he goes on to Facebook Messenger and starts messaging me and almost like picking for an argument. And I had to say, "Go in peace." The following day, the vicar of Avebury gets back in touch with me and says he thinks he could handle it differently. So, it was felt like the suddenly the vicar of Avebury was targeting me, and I wasn't even going to those places. And had I had done so or planned to have gone to those churches, I would have asked him anyway. So I felt that that was a really nasty thing to do to somebody on Facebook in public.
And normally the Church of England, well, is it an Anglican church? They're usually fairly standoffish. They're
Mm,
usually pretty easygoing, I find. Whenever I go in England, when I'm look, or even in Scotland, up to the recumbent stones in Aberdeenshire, the staff in the churches are usually lovely. There's never any problem or anything, and that's kind
mm.
of upsetting to hear. I'm very upset to hear that actually, because if this is going to spread through like the Church of England and into other religions, then like so many of these sites are on church properties. They're accessible through, church lands. It creates a second layer of control.
Yeah, exactly. So I think when we look at how people are, it's almost like a knee-jerk reactions going on at Avebury. That he suddenly reacted like that, and I'm sure he agreed when the next day, yes, he could have handled it a lot differently. But what I see as well with my colleagues in places like Mexico and other countries besides, it's this gradual easing up of our freedom at ancient sites. You can go into this part, but you'll not be able to go into this part. And I don't know what we went to the Hypogeum uh, quite a few years ago, Thomas, and it's recently been revamped, and they've taken away all the wooden steps, replaced it with steel and glass, and you have to have a speaker now to your ear, telling you the narrative. And I said I don't want to listen to that, and I was asked 3 times, could you please put the headphones on at the Hypergym. So in the end, I was pretending to have that on because I thought that that's not the experience that I've had at that site alone. So Malta is gradually changing its rules.
I remember when we went to the Hypogeum in Al Safarnini, the two of us stayed at the back. Remember that? And we didn't. It was the guard, but then the guard came behind us, and that was even back then to sort of like watch us. It was really weird,
Mm.
and gosh, it was already a little bit totalitarian then. It's very very sad to hear Malta's like is not relaxed anymore, because that was a very relaxed place. The Hypogeum was the exception, and everywhere else, was fine.
Yes, yes. And in places like Mexico as well, you're getting the restrictive numbers and you're getting, restrictions of where you can go at certain places. So I think it's worldwide. And I think the buck, to some regard, stops at UNESCO.
Just to digress, here in Ireland, a lot of people are kind of have wised up to the fact, at Newgrange, the way the sun comes through the box and the famous story on the solstice and lights it up. And for the last 10, 20 years, they've only allowed dignitaries in to see it and not the general public. It's starting to look like that thing is a fraud, that it was basically a tourist trap thing invented by an archaeologist in the 60s to make Newgrange famous as having this sun thing. And that's sort of and a lot of photographs were released online of that build, And Newgrange is literally an abomination. Behind those stones is something like 1,000 tons of reinforced concrete that was put in. It's literally a 1960s shopping mall pretending to be a megalith. And before it was converted, I don't know if you've seen the old photographs of Newgrange. They were beautiful. It was a beautiful, tranquil, magical place. And there was a woman who used to live on a farm there, who used to be like the curator because our family always were. It wasn't official. It wasn't run by the government. And she used to talk openly about the fairies lived here, and I see the fairies all the time, and this kind of thing. And there was something gorgeous about it. Then the academics moved in and absolutely butchered Newgrange and also made it fraudulent. Now, I was very angry when I first heard this because that's not true. I don't believe it, that the Sunbox is a 1960s academic lie, but it is. Now, if they were doing that stuff as far back as 1966, 67, it shows you that this agenda has been kind of running for a long time. We see that with Stonehenge. It wasn't what in the 60s you could still walk up to Stonehenge, couldn't you?
Yes, you could, and it was being restored then, and by Professor Richard Atkinson and Professor Stuart. Now, Stuart Piggott. Now, what they did as well, they placed some of the Trilithon 57 and 58, not in their original socket holes. So that some of the reconstruction there wasn't particularly good. And as I point out in lectures and in my book, they actually buried a spare trilithon because it didn't fit into Stukely's model in 1724 of what Stonehenge looked like. So the earlier antiquarians were questioning the amount of trilithons. Was there six or was there seven? And English Heritage know that there's an extra trilithon buried, and it was buried as recently as 1930.
I have the Atkinson book, the one from the late 40s restoration, and it's a fascinating book with the photographs and everything on it. And they used a lot of concrete and steel bars to make them safe for
Mm.
the public. So they knew they were going to turn it into a tourist trap rather than an actual thing. Again, this thing of moving the stones, like the Lea Fowl at Tara, is not on the right place. It should be in front of the mound of the hostages. They we're back in Puritan times have never really ended. They've just become bureaucratic times, when it comes to these ancient sites. And we had a respite during the 1900s up until the 1990s, and then and now they're putting the lockdown again. And it to me, when you said you have friends in Mexico doing it, and I was in Sri Lanka and I couldn't, I had to actually escape from the government tour guide. It was like really bizarre. Like I ran to the jungle because I knew there was megaliths in the jungle near Sigiriya that you were not part of the official tour. And the guy was saying, "Oh, you can't go in there. It's full of crocodiles and cobras. You'll get eaten and this kind of thing." So, but it was. But I went in anyway, and there are megaliths just beside Sigiriya in the jungle that are astonishing, with writing and rock art on them that the official people there don't even recognize or write books on it about it or anything. And I asked the guy, "Well, who made that?" And he goes, "Oh, they were devil worshippers." That's the word I got. This guy's a Buddhist, by the way.
Mm.
They're devil worshippers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so much out there to be discovered. I mean, there really, really is. Just beyond Avebury Henge, for example, and Silbury area, there are megaliths in a stone circle on private land, a beautiful what's called a co-feature. They're normally large stones, that's recumbent, but there's much, much more. And even a megalithic Neolithic longhouse made of sarsen stone dating back thousands of years. So there is a lot more out there than we're spoon fed. And that's what I love about the megalithic world, Thomas. You can go out there like yourself, you can be an Indiana Jones, you can travel the world, and you can find new information and new things. The story has not ended, it's only just begun when you look at alternative history. It really, really has.